When I was younger, I was fascinated by the idea of people having supportive, structured families. Whenever I saw a family with the original father, the mother together, the children well taken care of, all of their needs met, I felt like I was a dirty child with raggedy clothes in the middle of the streets, peering into a restaurant. And inside that restaurant, there was a table with a whole family there, the siblings, the mother, the father, and they were happy and laughing, and I was dirty, and maybe I would have to find like a sandwich in the trash can or something to be able to eat that day. Now, this is how I felt emotionally. This is not what actually happened. But essentially, I felt like a type of subhuman category of people who weren't worthy enough to be taken care of, and people who were never going to have basic things. I had this eerie sensation that I would never be able to meet my own needs as an adult, and that it was silly to expect anything except from just basic, bare minimum survival. And to be honest, I also felt jealous of these people and wondered how it could be possible for them to deserve a father and a present mother and a loving family. That's not something that I'm used to feeling nowadays. On the whole, nowadays I feel quite supported, surrounded by loving people that I've handpicked. I have friends I can be myself around. I have a good relationship with both my sisters. I have a loving, respectful husband who's my best friend. And I have the best friends, people that I truly admire and that I can relax around. But this took a long time to build, because the reality is, growing up in toxic family systems with a narcissistic father or mother can be an experience that makes people feel worthless. This is because the caregivers do not have enough emotional maturity to empathize with the children's needs. Empathy means being able to see the world from another person's point of view and to act in accordance to what they actually need to feel nurtured, for example, when it comes to children. Narcissistic parents are self-centered, and sometimes sadistically so. When, for whatever reasons, parents are self-centered and narcissistic in such a way, they can't be attuned to the children's needs, and therefore these needs go unmet. And when children notice that they aren't receiving certain things, and this goes beyond just like food and shelter, we're talking about affection, being seen, being cherished, being respected. When a child notices that they don't receive these things, they come to the conclusion that it must be because they're worthless. Now, there's a lot of reasons why parents might not be emotionally attuned to children. It could be that they are on the narcissism spectrum or some other personality disorder that makes them not be able to empathize. It could be they have some sort of mood disorder that makes them not be able to get out of their own heads and their own pains. They could be just working too much, physically away or emotionally shut off. Deal with narcissism specifically, however, is that it functions in such a way that it feels entitled to other people's resources, even children's resources. There is a core sensation that the world owes the narcissistic mother or father something, and the narcissistic individual will feel entitled to extract or demand this from the world, including the children, no matter how it impacts other people. Narcissists also have a tremendously fragile sense of self, and that means that they are hypersensitive to criticism and take things personally quite frequently. And when they are triggered, they will react by inducing guilt or being aggressive or passive aggressive. And they will take it personally if another person, even if it's a child, is not sacrificing their own needs in order to meet the narcissistic parent's needs. So for example, a child's basic needs might be interpreted as a pain in the ass because it requires that they pull away from whatever they want to do and give that attention to the child. When your mom treats basic requests as if you're committing a crime, you might interpret that you're not worthy of receiving care and that you're inadequate for even having needs. A child's brilliance or beauty might trigger feelings of envy in a narcissistic parent. They might push the child down in order to feel better about themselves, or even objectify that child for their own gain, making that child feel like they're only useful for what they can provide and never for who they really are inside. Even a child's growing independence and autonomy, which is an absolutely normal human need, might be interpreted as a threat to a more emotionally dependent narcissistic mother. Said mother might actually find ways of thwarting the child's growing autonomy in order to avoid being abandoned. They might do this by keeping the child infantilized or even by parentifying them. In that situation, there's an inversion of roles, where the child becomes the caretaker to the mother. And then when that gets established, it's very hard to pull away because you feel that your mother's gonna fall apart if you don't take care of her, even if you're well into your 40s. I just want to make it clear that everything I say in this and other videos is applicable to narcissistic mothers and fathers, even if the examples I give are of just one or the other gender. Another way that child's needs go unmet is that narcissists are not able to take accountability for their shortcomings. So essentially, they need to project all of that shadow onto someone else. That's why in narcissistic family systems, one person, often a child, is chosen to be the scapegoat. The role of the scapegoat is to keep the narcissistic parent's self-image pristine. So the narcissistic mother or father might rage against this child, abuse this child, in order to regulate their own self-esteem. And this, of course, will often result in feelings of worthlessness in the daughter. In another scenario, the child might not be important either to be used as a scapegoat or to be used as a golden child whose main role is to validate the narcissistic mother endlessly. Children like these are often treated as if they didn't even exist. Because if the children aren't playing a role within the narcissistic parent's need to self-regulate, then they're essentially useless. And obviously, this can also instill a feeling of worthlessness in the invisible children. So there's many types of dynamics that can play out, but the reality is children need to be cherished for the little individuals that they are. They need to be mirrored and not be objectified in the service of essentially what is a 3 to 6 year old child within the body of a grown adult. And that's what a narcissistic mother or father is. And we're excluding here the situations in which there are psychopathic traits or other issues going on. But if that's what you're dealing with, then that's another layer of chaos. Hey guys, if you're getting any value from this video, then download your free PDF, Break the Chains, 10 Steps to Stop Your Narcissistic Parents' Control. You can find the link in the description box. Okay, so what do we do if we came from such a toxic family system and we feel worthless? Things do not change overnight when it comes to reprogramming and healing such core schemas. And in many cases, this is going to involve hiring a coach or a therapist who is well-versed in narcissism and toxic family systems. But here are just some tips that you can apply in order to start experiencing life and yourself differently. The first thing we have to get out of the way is that feeling repetitive, negative sensations about yourself, life, or people in general is a result of core unmet childhood needs. And these are universal needs. So that means you're not evil for having them. You're not too much for having them. It's just what children need. And in the way that it works with mammals, particularly humans, it is the parent's role to meet these needs. So the pain that you feel of worthlessness is literally the part of your brain that was programmed to repeat the core emotions that you felt over and over and over again throughout those formative years that are impacting you to this day. It's almost as if your neural networks that ingrained those repetitive emotional experiences just get reactivated over and over. It's like a memory that you have from the way you felt back then. It's really important to acknowledge that you were just feeling bad for not having those needs met, because this will shift the focus from you feeling worthless and too much to just, it was actually really normal for a child to react that way to not having their needs met. Would you shame a little girl for needing to rest? The first step is reframing the narrative. You are not worthless. This is not some sort of objective reality about your personality. You're just a human being reacting to not having basic universal needs nourished and satisfied. And that's a completely normal reaction to have. Now, the second step, and we're going to go into how to do this soon, is finding practical ways of meeting those needs now. So what does this mean? This could look like, let's say you were socially isolated and you still feel cut off from people, from humanity nowadays. It could mean something quite simple like taking a pottery class, taking a yoga class at the park, or not having your earbuds in every time you're at the gym and actually trying to strike up conversations. Now, mind you, I'm not telling you that you're gonna find your people from the get-go, but the more you put yourself out there, understanding that when you reach out to people, you eventually understand what your values and your needs are for relationships. You will be able to one day find your people, the people around whom you can just relax and be yourself. And you don't have to feel cut off from humanity. If your feelings of worthlessness are making you accept toxic relationships, then you can start by figuring out what you actually want for yourself, what's wrong in the relationship, and start communicating your desires more efficiently. If you find that your peers or your partner do not like this updated version of you, then that's good information to have, because you don't want to be wasting your time with people who can't respect your basic boundaries or have no interest in you when you have boundaries. If you felt neglected as a child and you find that you still neglect yourself to this day, then it might be time to look into some lifestyle changes. Maybe start walking or eating more vegetables or drinking more water or sleeping better. If you have an unrelenting, ruthless inner critic that won't let you make any mistakes, then it might be time to start doing something just for fun. I actually took dance lessons And I was really bad at it because it was hard to do. And this allowed me to just laugh it off with the other women there and men who were also laughing it off because they were imperfect as well. But in the beginning, it was hard because I would ruthlessly punish myself for being anything less than perfect. If you felt that you always had to perform in order to get validation, you can start by trying to actually be yourself and not perform anymore. It may seem impossible that finding ways to counteract the feeling of worthlessness in the many situations nowadays where you're also ignoring your needs can heal that past trauma. But that past trauma is not in the past because the past doesn't exist. It's in your neural networks, and you can definitely rewire your brain slowly and give yourself new experiences that are going to reframe the narrative from now on. Okay, so we need to acknowledge that we're not worthless. We were just reacting to unmet universal needs, which is absolutely normal. We need to find practical ways of meeting those needs nowadays. But how do we do that? So this is the basis of everything that's going to heal you from now on. There is a voice inside of you, a silent voice that you can't hear probably because you were taught not to trust yourself and not to trust this voice. But there's an inner knowing that tells you that there are situations in your life right now that it wants you to change. This is your inner compass, your higher self, or your wise part. Like when you think about your relationships, what do you already know deep down inside about them? Or when you think about your career, is there anything that you already know about that as well? Or when you think about the way that you relate to your body, what do you already know about that? Or the way that you relate to your finances? What does that inner voice tell you about that area of your life? The trick to knowing what need to meet is listening to that inner voice and actually obeying it. Now, it can seem pretty crazy making in the beginning because it's not just a toxic mother or father that's going to make you not trust that voice. Society itself tells you to look outwards in order to guide yourself from the outside in, instead of guiding yourself from the inside out. So it can feel absolutely unnatural to actually pay attention to what this inner voice is telling you to do and do it. But this is what's going to create a sense of self that is often lacking in daughters and sons of narcissistic parents. Listening to that inner compass and doing what it asks of you is an act of rebellion against your upbringing, because doing this affirms that you are a singular being with unique singular existence, and that you have the absolute right to live your life according to what makes sense to that inner voice. Now, the hard part isn't just listening to the inner compass, because there's so many other voices screaming in our heads. It's doing the obeying part. As you start going against your programming, you're probably going to feel a lot of resistance. It's going to feel silly, hopeless, but it's the obeying your inner voice part that is going to give you everything you want, because this part of you knows everything that's best for you in terms of your relationships, in terms of the experiences it wants you to have. Many of the other parts of our personalities are just programmed to react to a sense of lack or worthlessness, like we've been doing our whole lives, but not this inner voice. Your inner compass envisions the best life for you, and that's why you want to honor what it tells you to do. So to summarize, acknowledge that feelings of worthlessness are just normal reactions to you as a child feeling bad about unmet universal needs. It's not that you're bad or inadequate or too much or worthless. They were just normal emotional reactions of sadness, of pain, because there wasn't an adult to meet those needs for you. Uncover those needs by listening to your inner compass and actually obeying what it tells you to do, no matter what. And do this by asking yourself, wait a second, underneath it all, what do I already know about the situation? There's something in there that voice has been telling you about some situation in your life right now. And as I'm saying this, you probably already know what I'm talking about. So if you know what your inner compass has been telling you to pay attention to, and it has been telling you to do, drop it down in the comments below. Okay, guys, that's all I have for today. If you thought this video was interesting and useful, you might like watching this other video.